this wasn't right. The weather was what the doctor had ordered, but the architecture of the location, this wasn't Metropolis. At least not that we knew. Had I bought the wrong ticket in that wild turkey chase brought on by the Joker's dastardly deeds? Or were we too early for this to be the city of tomorrow we had read about and seen for all those years? Maybe the Man of Steel could explain this strange mirage of familiarity.
Hi, I'm Matthew.
And I'm John.
And we're the DC Detectives.
It's our job to go back through the annals of DC history and chronicle the evolution of all your favorite heroes from start
to every reversible finish.
Alrighty. It's time. It has begun. I am excited. God. I am so excited.
I have words to say today.
Oh man, it's going to be so good. Action Comics #1 with that super green car and it's not cocaine dandy, but it seems like whiskey businessman.
Yeah, alright.
He's not a dandy per se, so much as he is just well dressed.
Whiskey wuss?
Whiskey wuss. I like it. I like whiskey wuss. So the first page of Action Comics #1 by Jerome Siegel and Joe Shuster is Superman's origin. Look at that. We get that right off the bat.
And even shorter than Batman's.
Yeah, you know why? Because it's just not that hard. Guy can do things. I just like that we have the distant planet. Scientist put his son on a rocket. The planet explodes. Goes to Earth. He's found in an orphanage. Not Mom, Pa Kent. So
they do retcon that in a bit, though.
They do retcon that in a bit. But it's a baby lifting a chair. It's him jumping over stuff. He's lifting girders. He's racing trains. And then he's got the suit already. And I like that. It's so much shorter that they've got scientific reasoning for his powers. So they've got a picture of an ant lifting something up. And they've got a grasshopper leapfrogging another grasshopper, because that's totally what grasshoppers do, right? But we have his super strength, his jumping, because no flying, his speed, and that nothing less than a bursting shell could penetrate his skin. So he's super tough. We get all of that right away. And we start in medias res, where Superman is carrying a blonde woman who is bound and gagged to the governor's estate.
You know what this is? This is the first level of a video game. You get dropped in as your or the first 10 minutes of new Star Trek movie.
Oh my gosh, you're right.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. He drops this woman, make yourself comfortable. I haven't the time to attend to it. What a jerk. He's kind of a jerk. It's really funny. Goes to the governor's estate. The guy says, what are you, out of your mind? It's really late. Go home. And Superman just busts through the door, picks the guy up, who presumably is a guard or a butler, I'm imagining. I
like that that's the thing that the butler calls out. Not the fact that he's dressed like a circus strongman with a crazy cape.
Right. Not like, what, are you insane?
I suppose if he's coming around knocking at that time of night, insanity is kind of already assumed.
So they get to the governor's door, which of course is like solid steel, and he's like, oh, don't worry about that. Just rips the door open, goes to the governor, tells the governor that, hey, Evelyn Curry is to be electrocuted in 15 minutes for murder. I have proof here of her innocence. A signed confession. Presumably from the blonde woman that he has deposited on this guy's grounds. The guard pulls a gun, shoots Superman. Superman's like, are you really? And we get a little, like, doomsday clock down for, like, the woman who's about to be executed in the corner of these two panels. And the governor's like, yeah, sure, fine. You know, she's safe. And the woman is pardoned.
I actually counted this. So Superman moments. He's breaking things, or he's taking a bullet, or he's doing a heroic pose. There are, in the span of these 4 pages, 14 different Superman moments.
Wow.
This is paced super fast.
Yeah, because we get immediately after this into Superman as Clark Kent reading the newspaper the next day saying, like, oh good, I'm not mentioned. And the mayor being like, holy crap, this guy was super strong. It was weird as hell. And everyone's like, are you okay, man? Like, no one's saying anything else. They're all just kind of looking at him oddly. And the Daily Star, not the Daily Planet, but the Daily Star, the editor calls Kent in, and he goes, hey, did you ever hear of Superman? And Kent, no. And the editor says, hey, look, you're going to be covering Superman from now on. He goes, you got it. I'll be right on that, sir. And as he's leaving the editor's office, they get a tip about a wife beating. And this is the first thing I had to stop on was, why is the newspaper getting a tip about a wife beating and not the police?
Maybe they're listening to the police broadcast. Did they even have those at that point, actually?
Police radios were around. I'm sure they had shortwave radios or some form. That's probably something we should have looked into. But the guy's on like a rotary like receiver and microphone phone.
Probably a telegraph receiver?
I don't know. Regardless, they hear about this beating and he goes like, go report on it. Clark turns into Superman, runs there, beats the crap out of the dude.
Beats the shit out of him.
Yeah, he actually, you know what? He picks him, throws him into a wall, and I'm like, that guy just pooped himself. That guy had to have pooped himself with just the force he is thrown against that wall and just, ow. Then he pulls a knife out, tries to stab Superman, and Superman's like, bro, come on. Really? Guy freaks out. He faints.
One of the things you'll notice, starting with this guy, all of his enemies aren't just beaten, they're humiliated.
Yeah.
They are rendered impotent. And this guy, as soon as he gets thrown into the wall, he's still got the knife, but he's standing there, he's got his shirt sleeves are ripped, so he looks like he's just spent 5 weeks in the jungle trying to get back. He's
falling apart.
Yep.
So Superman changes back into his civvies, the cops arrive, and Clark Kent's like, whoa, I guess Superman did this. And not me. And not me.
To be fair, if you saw Clark Kent, mild-mannered Clark Kent, and someone who had gotten the shit kicked out of him, you would not assume Clark Kent.
Fair enough. Next panel, Clark is stammering, asking Lois out on a date. And Lois says, I suppose I'll give you a break for a change. I don't think giving Clark a date is giving him a break. I feel like agreeing to take him on the date is giving her a break from his incessant asking.
So, as a quick aside, we have already recorded a really great conversation with Arden Lee, and we'll put Twitter handles, etc. in the show notes for both this and that interview. But talking specifically about the relationship between Clark Kent and Lois Lane, really interesting stuff. Mm-hmm. And this was one of the things we talked about. We didn't talk about this particular bit, but one thing I think this is an on-again, off-again relationship, and it's the, oh, God, we're clearly on the way out, but I'll give you a date for tonight. I view that makes sense with the phrase, give you a break, at least to me.
That's fair. So they're dancing at a club. Mafioso toughs are observing how beautiful Lois is from afar. One of them asks to cut in, and by asks, he shoves Clark out of the way. And Clark suggests to Lois, maybe you should just give him a dance, because Clark is still keeping the ruse up that he is mild-mannered and a coward. Lois is not having any of that. She slaps the Mafia tough and bails. The Mafia tough storms after her. They get in their car. They knock the cabbie off the road. They get Lois. They put her in her car. And Clark is now officially Superman, and he is going after him.
So I have a proposal. Superman doesn't kill, at least not nearly as often as Batman.
No.
So may I propose that every time that Lois could have used a taser, we do the ding?
Or a zap noise.
That works too.
Clark, Superman, we're going to go back and forth because it's basically the same person, though. Superman. We'll never call him Kal-El unless specifically told.
That's also way later in here, I assume.
Right. So Clark catches up, stands in front of the car, and the guys are like, holy shit, there's a dude in the road. They swerve, and Clark is now chasing them. Lifts the car up and reenacts the cover in this page, which is kind of funny.
Also, I want to call out, this is before Superman flies, so not only is he leaping, but also when he's doing the super speed stuff, he's actually running with the cape behind him.
He's running and not flying.
Yeah, exactly that. And I really like the way that looks. Just it's cool to have the same kind of Flash pose, but with a cape instead. I really like the look.
Yeah, it's interesting. It does definitely cut a different figure. Mm-hmm. So he's recreating the cover, goes after the Mafia thugs, hangs him up, does his thing. Yeah, he's giving this dude a wedgie.
God, yeah, no, he is definitely.
He's picking him up by the back of his pants, and he hangs him by the back of his pants on a telephone pole. He's giving him a wedgie. He's doing like an old school Simpsons bully thing, like running the guy up the flagpole.
Yeah.
Okay. We see Clark rescuing Lois, picks her up, and he takes her to the outskirts of town. Not even her home. Just, you're close, right? Walks off.
One thing that's interesting, purely from a comics code type of perspective, Lois actually has cleavage in this one specific shot.
Holy crap, you're right.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen that anywhere else. You almost get a little suggestion of it in that other panel. But we have, even with characters who have fairly deep necklines in their dresses, in this and in Batman, you just don't see cleavage. That just does not happen. So it's interesting to see that bit here, which is interesting because later on we'll see Lois actually have a little bit more sexual/romantic agency, but even then, no cleavage.
No, it is interesting how much, I want to say, modesty they give her. Especially because if you look at, like, Dala and Julie and even Catwoman, not a lot. Even with Catwoman's, like, semi-open keyhole thing, there's no cleavage.
Anything there.
Interesting. Well, that's... Yeah, I hadn't noticed that. So the next day, Lois goes in and says, oh my god, I saw Superman last night. And of course the editor doesn't believe her because she's a woman. What a dick. You saw pink elephants? That's a reference to, like, being drunk, I guess? Or high?
I think it's a drinking thing, because you think of Dumbo. Sometimes I think of Dumbo.
I assume you don't think of Dumbo. You don't know what... maybe I'm thinking of Huffalumps. So, the next day, she's talking to her editor. Doesn't believe her. Pink elephants. And Lois is giving Clark the cold shoulder because she's like, you're a jerk. And he's like, I'm sorry about last night. Please don't be angry with me. But of course, she has total rights to be angry with him. Yeah. Because he was a jerk.
We talk about this a little bit with Arden, but Clark straight up says, just dance with the creepy guy and he'll go away.
He puts her in genuine danger.
Yes.
For the sake of his facade.
Yep.
So the editor calls Clark into his office and says, you're now going to cover this South American war in this republic. San Monte doesn't exist, of course.
Not even remotely.
You're going to go cover this, get some war shots. P.S. You're a city reporter, now go be a foreign war correspondent.
Specifically tasked with following Superman.
Right. You're now a foreign war correspondent. Our supposed best resource is now going to just not even be here to cover the beat that we told him he's going to cover.
Yeah.
So, Kent takes a train, not towards San Monte, but to Washington, D.C. Now here...
Actually, technically, that's probably still in the same direction.
Probably, but not, like, directly to. There is no ship to Paris at this point. So, here's the thing that I want everyone to keep in mind while we start talking about this secondary plot line that is oddly the main plot line for the next 2 issues.
They do that.
It doesn't make any sense. I get the reason he's doing it, and I understand why he's doing what he's doing. But there was no lead-up to send us in this direction, and therefore it is just really not solid.
The pacing of these issues is very strange, because it will be a thing comes up, and Superman resolves it, but the thing just comes out of nowhere.
Right.
We'll see, somebody was on the tracks, or there was a road incident. I guess I should do that and handle all road accidents right now.
It's the weird early equivalent of Superman's, like, floating above Metropolis, listening for things to happen. Mm-hmm. And instead of that occurring, he's doing one thing and then something else catches his eye.
Yeah, so there's no thematic relevance or proper pacing to it. It will just be bam out of nowhere.
Yes.
It's very strange to read.
So Clark is in D.C. He sees a senator speaking... presumably about war and things of bellicose nature. He's then seen outside the Senate chambers talking to a lobbyist, a well-known lobbyist. Clark goes to encounter these men when they go and have their like secret rendezvous and shake down the senator.
With their younger gentleman friends?
With their young gentleman friends. They have like a tussle. Superman basically confronts the senator and says like, yo, stop, being on the take. This isn't cool. And the senator says, who are you? And the first instance of jumping to solve a problem.
So one thing worth noting, I do want to point out that there's a key difference between being able to super leap and super fly. Mm-hmm. The key thing being, and we'll see a little bit of the results of this, once you jump, you can't change directions. So the other thing, that the hypothetical situation that comes up, is if he accidentally drops somebody, he's midway through like a 20-second jump. Super speed or not, he's not going to be able to get back over there. And he's grabbing this guy by, like, the ankle.
Right. And we found, early when they describe his powers, he's able to leap above 20 stories. So he's jumping about 200 feet in the air for 1/8 of a mile with the Senator Barrows. And he's leaping around and, like, jumping on telephone wires. And the guy's freaking out. He's like, we'll be electrocuted. Superman's like, not if we don't touch anything that's grounded. And he's scaring the bejesus out of this guy. They land, and he goes, take me down, I'll talk. And Superman goes, whoops, I've missed it. And that's where we end this issue with Superman going, oh no, I missed. And they're just falling towards a building. And then at the bottom it says, hey, and so begins the startling adventures of the most sensational strip character of all time, Superman. A physical marvel, a mental wonder. Superman is destined to reshape the destiny of the world. Only in Action Comics. We have a lot of advertisement in all of these.
Oh, yeah. The branding machine on this is immediate, and I have some stuff about that.
That's the end of issue 1. Is him doing this, and then we get like an odd cliffhanger. So the next issue, Action Comics number 2, I like that we're just number 1 and number 2. It's so kind of clean and nice, but then again, the Detective Comics have been going on for so long. Mm-hmm. They were probably going on, or they obviously were going on while this was happening. So, of course, Batman starts with later double digits. Action Comics number 2 continues right where we left off, with Superman crashing down on the cement, letting the Senator down, saying like, hey, so you going to tell me what's up or what? And the guy goes, yes, there's a guy who's been telling me to, sort of do things in a more aggressive fashion that kind of go towards American war.
Specifically, to get them embroiled in, quote, Europe.
Yes, to get them embroiled in Europe.
Now you'll notice, the war is in South America.
It doesn't make a lot of sense. No, I imagine they're kind of hinting at stuff that's going on in Europe, but
my guess is it's just, honestly, it's continuity error. Because the war looks European. Everybody speaks English.
Mm-hmm. Well, comics.
Yeah.
So, this munitions magnate, Emil Norvell, is responsible for making this politician go crooked. Superman goes to pay him a visit. The guy presses a button, and a dozen men with Tommy guns come out and start shooting him. And I know it's a dozen.
Say a dozen.
I know it's a dozen because Superman deals with them by throwing them all out a window, and it says, a moment later, a dozen bodies fly headlong out the window into the night, the machine guns wrapped firmly about their necks. How high up is that window?
It's not very. Look at that style of window. That looks like the kind of nice little, you've got your little brook niche.
I hope so, because if not, he just killed a dozen men.
He didn't. From looking at the way, those windows look like ground level.
Okay, so we're not gonna body count that.
It would also be out of character. He hasn't killed anybody else. I don't think in this entire 6-issue bit.
You sure about that?
I think,
because I'm sure that he does in this issue twice.
All right, let's see it.
So Superman then just basically says, "Hey, bro, look at me bend this iron bar," and the guy goes, "Okay." He goes, "So what you're gonna do is you're gonna get on a boat to San Monte." Guy goes, okay, that's out of nowhere, but sure. Next day, the guy's on the boat to San Monte. So's Lois, though, because Lois shows up and she's been told to shadow Clark and help him. So Clark goes, oh crap, okay. Well, sure, yeah, great, the more the merrier. While he's on the boat, he changes into his Superman garb to scare the bejesus out of the guy again. He goes, hey, when you get to San Monte, you're going to enlist in the army. And the guy goes, you're full of crap. I hired all these thugs. They're going to deal with you again. Really, guy? You thought that the first thugs went over really well. You're going to hire another group of guys to deal with this.
Those were his guys. Now he's outsourcing.
Yeah, now he's outsourcing, so these guys are probably a lot better. Of course, they're not. Superman jumps off the boat, swims out to sea, and the next night, the thugs turn on their guy because they're like, well, yeah, sure, we're backstabbing pirates, essentially. Superman has to rescue him.
Specifically because he refuses to pay them.
Correct. So Superman saves him the next night, tells him, you're going to enlist in the army when you get there, and the guy goes, fine, okay, well, I could enlist in the army, but then I'm just going to escape at the first chance I get. He gets in the army. He's traveling in a very hellscape-ish looking place. It's lots of mountains, very orange, dead trees, browns, yellows.
If you flattened the landscape in the battle at the end of Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yes. So, the munitions magnate, Emil, is still...
I'm pretty sure that's not how you pronounce that.
Emil?
Probably Emil.
Probably Emil? I don't know. Enamel?
You could also call him by his last name.
Norville is trudging with the soldiers, and of course Superman dresses up like a soldier and says, hey, you're not getting out of this. And he's like, shit. You're here. Okay, I guess I'm not getting out of this. Superman likes to dress up when he's not Clark Kent.
Yeah, he does that a lot.
He dresses up a lot as Superman, because apparently a guy without glasses is a lot easier to blend into a crowd than a guy with glasses. I'm not sure. I don't know what...
It gives him an excuse to try on new outfits.
Correct.
He feels very free.
He likes playing dress up, and that's totally fine.
Yeah.
It is, it's superhero craft. Mm-hmm. Batman could learn a lot from him.
Actually, well, Batman's villains couldn't.
Batman's villain. I'm saying, like, Batman,
But
like,
Batman himself,
instead of
yeah,
being
yeah.
Bruce Wayne and walking into places to, like, see if these guys are spies, maybe he should have, like, dressed up like a shadier character, or even just someone more mundane.
Yeah.
Superman is now on the front lines with this guy, and this guy is freaking the hell out because, holy crap, war is scary. And Superman's like, yeah, and it's terrible. And he's like, yes, this is insane. So are you. Please let me leave. He's like, no, you can't. The next night, after the conflict that they've gone through is over, Superman is Superman. He gets into a Superman garb, runs to the enemy encampment, snaps a picture of these guys in the intelligence tent, says, thanks, guys, and just bails. And that's like a picture he sends back to the editors, like, this is going to be a great shot.
Especially with the expressions they have. Like, they do the whole shocked expression. It
It's
would
a
be
candid-
really easy to tell who took that picture. Because I guarantee only one person is going to bust through the door like that.
It's such a candid shot. You're like, this is like really, really bad. This
Yeah.
is a bad photograph. As someone who studied journalism and I had to go through pictures to see which ones were better to forward the narrative of a story, that's a terrible photo.
Also worth noting, costume change. Superman now has a red, background for the S-Shield.
Yes, he does now have a red background for the S-Shield. Previously in the first story, it was much more...
It was indistinct or kind of yellow.
Yeah, the whole suit in the first one is much darker and the colors are much more unrecognizable.
It's almost a black jumpsuit.
It is almost a black suit, but then again, that could be an instance of blue being used for black. This is clearly blue now being blue.
Yes.
So we see Lois in her hotel meeting up with this woman who's a wealthy traveler, quote unquote. And these political soldiers come in looking for the wealthy traveler who slips into Lois's room, puts a piece of paper in her dresser, and then bounces. These guys are looking for this woman. They go into Lois's room, who is, I guess, dressed the same? Because they're not at
I
first.
think it's a continuity error, because flip ahead. So you've got the next scene is Lois is accused of being a spy because she had some documents that Lola had slipped into her room. Oh no, I'm innocent.
Her name was Lola. She was a showgirl.
And at that point, she goes from, with the judge, the night before, she is wearing, like, the nice business suit that she had not been wearing a moment before.
Well, so, no,
And
you
then
know what
flip
actually it
one
is? It
step-
is actually that is Lola saying you're wasting your time searching
Okay.
your room.
Okay,
That's
so-
not a problem. That's not a problem because what is the problem is Lois is wearing the red jacket with a yellow shirt with the judge and being arrested. And the next day we see her, she's in a green dress.
She is in Lola's dress.
She's definitely... They dress
Continuity
Lola...
error.
Yeah, they dress Lola up.
It's continuity
Or they
error.
dress Lois up like Lola?
Yeah.
I don't know.
The artist presumably lost track of who was dressed as who.
They do look the same, though. They are
Yeah,
drawn
and-
specifically to look the same.
Specifically that, and also in the final bit of Lola, she doesn't have the hat. That's the distinguishing feature the whole way through. So I think in this chunk, the artist is just getting confused over.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what happened there, but it's not very good. So while Clark is submitting this picture of candid generals to the Daily Star, Lois is getting put under military arrest. That night, Clark hears that she's about to be executed the next day as a spy and a traitor. So Clark decides, I can't let that stand. Dresses up like Superman. When she's about to be shot, he jumps in front of the bullets, grabs her, bails, jumps with her away. She's like, oh my god, thank you. He's like, save the questions. They land in the vicinity of someone being tortured. That's convenient, isn't it?
Very.
It's a guy he's tied up to a tree being tortured by other people. Clark says, this is bullshit. Goes to confront them. And that guy's dead.
Yeah, probably.
That
I'd
guy's
forgotten
dead.
about him.
So Superman one-handed throws the torturer like a football into space away from where they are. And I'm telling you, anybody falling from a height of what has to be 50 or plus feet,
Going head first.
at any speed that was able to launch him like that with no padding, no gear, no nothing, probably, if not paralyzed, he is dead.
Alright, I'll give you that one. Make a sad ding.
Yeah, it's... The torturer vanishes from view behind a grove of distant trees with a pitiful wail. Those are trees! He's higher than trees!
Well, to be fair, he could land in the trees. They could break his fall.
Oh, that would hurt.
Oh, it would hurt like a mother.
Oh, gosh. That would hurt. Okay, so that's a questionable one, but I'm thinking that guy's dead. So, Superman...
You have your headcanon.
My headcanon is that guy is super dead. Super killed by Superman.
He had to go there.
He's cadaverific. Superman gets the guy who's being tortured, says, hey, you're fine, go be free. Then makes sure that Lois is free. She goes, will I ever see you again? Who knows? Perhaps tomorrow, perhaps never. He's a jerk when he's Superman, and it's so funny.
He's brusque.
He's very terse, no nonsense. So as Superman's going back to his unit to rejoin Norville. He's going to find Norville. He sees that their unit's under attack. He sees anti-air guns and a plane fighting. This guy dies too because he punches that plane out of the sky.
Yeah,
that guy's dead. No parachute.
Yeah, all right. Yeah.
No parachute scene.
Yeah,
that guy's dead. Superman punches the plane out of the sky. And Norville thinks he's totally fine. Superman comes back. He says, "Hey, still alive, buddy. You're not getting out of this that easily." And Norville's freaking the hell out. He says, "Let me go. I don't like war ever again. This is nonsense and crazy. I just want to go home." And he goes,
I will be Tony Stark from now on."
Right. That's what he wants to hear. Superman says,
actually, wow, yeah, this is the Tony Stark origin story.
So Superman says, "Perfect. That's over. Now I'm going to go stop the war." Goes to both militaries' head camps, gets both generals, jumps with them to an undisclosed location, and says, "Hey, talk it out, or I'll clean up both of you myself." And my favorite, though, is just, he's straight up threatening these two men to just work out their problems. And the best part is he says, "Then why are your armies battling?" "I don't know. Can you tell me?" "No, can you?" I feel like generals would know.
So, are we finished with the story summary?
Yeah, because really all that happens is they agree, they make a truce. Superman goes home. The editor says, "Hey, good pictures, Cat. That's a weird candid." And he goes, "Yeah, isn't it? Just also, there's been no Superman news since you've been gone. That's a lucky break, right?" "Yeah, totally." And then, of course, there is attention, all American youth. Superman now appears on the comic page of many newspapers. They're basically telling you that the Superman comics are coming up in your newspapers. Clip this out and send it in, and we'll send it to you as well. Yes, we are now done.
This story is super communist. It is super communist. Every soldier that isn't part of the faceless majority is either a war profiteer or a completely out of touch general just moving pieces around on the board, the old nobility, or a sadist. That's it. The idea that this
Aren't they all? No. They're not. I'm sorry.
This story is just hey, war doesn't actually happen for any reason that can be justified. War doesn't happen for any reason that involve mass movement. This is the condemnation of the military-industrial complex on a massive scale. There are pieces throughout that I'm going to call... I don't
call it
think
like you see it, yeah.
I don't think Superman is necessarily himself written from a fascist or a communist perspective. I think there are
But the messages that are being...
The message in this particular case is very communist very communist in theory, not so communist in practice, because there were all the times where we're like, no, this war is totally cool.
Okay.
This isn't a capitalist war.
Yeah.
I am disenchanted with communism, in case you couldn't tell.
I can definitely see where you're going with this, and that makes a lot of sense.
One other thing. Let's look at that. Let's look at that. Moon fetish.
Oh, does Siegel and Schuster have the moon fetish as well?
It does seem that way.
Just like the Eiffel Tower, seen at every shot when you're in Paris.
It's exactly that. Yeah. How do you imply? By the way, we're in Paris. By the way, how do you tell that we're in night? Moon, Eiffel Tower.
So, the next story is actually a rather short one, and probably a little more communist as well, if I believe. It's the miner story.
It's very much that kind of thing.
So, a mine collapses. Superman hears about it at the newspaper. They go see to it, Kent. Go report on it. Clark goes. Superman, speed runs there, then shows up at the mine, dresses up like a miner again, because I'm Superman, I can dress up, but not when I'm Clark Kent. Dresses up like a miner, pretends to fall into the mine. He smells poison gas, but thank God he's not affected by it. Goes further into the mine, finds a bunch of collapsed miners, picks them up, puts them on an elevator so that they're all taken out to safety. He goes further into the mine to find the guy who was actually covered in the collapse. He turns a corner, finds the guy who's in the collapse, pulls all the rocks off of him, brings him to safety, climbs up one arm, because he's Superman and he's, doing it. Everyone's like, well, I guess, hauling ass. Like, no one's asking questions, but they're like, that's impressive, dude. Way to go. Good upper body strength. He also notices while he's in the mine that the signal cord is cut and it doesn't work, which is the first sign we get that something in this mine is not really up to code. It's not really good. They save the guy. Clark, as Clark, finds out that miner is being brought to the hospital. He goes to the hospital as Clark Kent to report on what happened. The guy tells him that the safety conditions in the mine are terrible and that the guy who owns the mine is to blame. So Clark goes to the guy who owns the mine to get a statement. The guy effectively says, piss off, I don't care. So Clark goes, you're a piece of shit. and walks out of the office. That night, Clark dresses up like a miner again, jumps the wall with his Superman power, gets caught on the guy's grounds of his home, and is brought inside his home where he's having a fancy dress party with all of his socialite buddies. This is where I got lost, where this guy, Blakely, I believe his name is, who owns the mine, mentions, is like, hey, look at this guy, he just wants to see how the other half lives, blah, 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 everyone's having a good, grand old time laughing at the miner. Blakely suggests that they have the rest of their party in the mine. Now, I feel like Clark would have tricked him into doing that, but this guy's stupid enough that he did it himself.
It's a demonstration of, hey, look at our opulence and our stupidity that blinds us to how weird we are, how much we just exist for frippery.
So, they all think that's a grand idea. They all go to the mine to have a party in the mine. They're having a mine rave, essentially. A 1930s fancy dress mine rave. Which someone somewhere is now going to want to make.
Man, and actually with a well-made mine with enough space, enough safety features, that could be interesting.
It could be.
The acoustics would be crazy.
You also have to take into effect that the vibrations wouldn't actually make the mine cave in.
Yeah.
Require very careful planning. So while these people are partying it up in this mine, they're like, this is shitty. I don't like it here. It's gross and dank, and one guy's like, I don't like this at all. This is bullshit. Where's the party at? They're not having a good time. The allure of the novelty has worn off for these people.
And it only took 2 minutes.
So Superman says, how to put a hastily conceived plan into action.
At least he's honest.
No truer words were ever spoken, Superman. No truer words were ever spoken. He attacks the wooden supports in the tunnel, causes a cave-in, and everyone freaks the hell out. Like they should, because they're in a mine. This was not up to code, nor is it safe. Blakely goes, oh shit, we're all in danger. We gotta get the hell out of here. They're passing out now because the oxygen is starting to thin out. Clearly one woman passes out just because she faints and she's scared. And everyone's like, Blakely, you've gotta get us out of here. And he's like going to Superman, who's still dressed like a miner. He's like, you gotta get us out. Superman says, maybe we'll be rescued in 5 minutes, maybe never, I don't know. The safety cords don't work. So, the fancy dress people turn on Blakely. Like they should, because this was a stupid idea. But who's the more fool? The fool or the fool that follows him?
Everyone is stupid. No, I didn't say anything about everyone in that statement is stupid. I meant everyone is stupid.
Okay, that's fair. So, they're gonna beat the crap out of each other. And Blakely says, no, there's safety devices. We'll just get out of here. They're like, oh, thank God, Blakely, you're so smart. Of course, the safety devices don't work because he has not kept his mind up to code. Clark, again, provides an idea that perhaps they could get out of here if they dig their way out. And the guys start digging and digging and digging and digging, and of course they pass out purely because there's lack of oxygen. Blakely says, that he's learned his lesson. He has his moral of the story moment. Oh, if I only had this all to do over again, I never really knew what the men down here have to face. He passes out.
G.I. Joe.
Yeah, right.
Sonic says.
And Superman says, that's all I needed to hear. He digs them out with his bare hands because he's Superman. Lets them all out. And everyone's safe. Blakely basically says, I'll never do that again. Thanks, mysterious stranger. And Clark goes as Clark Kent the next day to say, hey, how's it going? And the guy says, I'm going to fix everything and give everybody compensation, etc., etc. Another advertisement at the bottom for the Superman of America Club. Get your membership in today, fellers. God, this is so much branding. I love it. It's so funny. But that one's, again, big business sucks.
Yeah. And especially, one thing worth noting, Stanislaw is very... First off, that's a very Polish name.
Stanislav is the name of the miner who tells Clark that the conditions in the mine are terrible.
Yep. And he also speaks in a relatively broken form of English.
Broken foreign English, yes.
Yeah, and that's also when Clark is first captured dressed as a miner in the fancy dress party, he does the same. He speaks in semi-broken English as well.
But he doesn't really keep that up.
He doesn't. He doesn't even slightly.
So the ruse is kind of
pointless. That falls apart at a certain point. But it's interesting to notice that this was very clearly let's talk a little bit about the exploitation of ethnic minorities. But it's worth noting, this is another symptom of the time. On the one hand, props to Siegel and Schuster for that. On the other hand, that their idea of the othered ethnic minorities are very explicitly Eastern Europeans. We have not, in any of these stories, seen a single person of color.
We've seen the Asian guys in the Batman ones.
Okay, you're right. That's true. And, in fact, Ming, I want to say. Wong is portrayed positively, but that
the quote unquote unofficial mayor of Chinatown,
it is a problematic trope, but it is at least a positive portrayal. But other than that, I don't think there's been a single.
He's treated with respect and is there to help.
Yes, it is. It is occasionally a problematic trope, but that is a positive portrayal. So props on that one. Mm-hmm. But he is the single positive POC we've seen. Correct?
I believe you're right, because the others have been either villains or a guy wearing distinctly yellow face makeup.
Yeah. And I'm thinking this through my head. I don't think a single POC appears in the entirety of this, not just this issue, but this book.
I think you're correct. So here's something I wanted to ask you guys. I'm not sure if you've ever thought about this. And we're in Action Comics number 4. Did you ever want to watch Superman play football? Because I did, and I'm really happy because this next issue is Superman playing football.
This issue made you happy?
Yes! Of course it did. It's amazing. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
It starts off not making sense.
Oh, it's so good. So, things that I like about the Superman comics as they're happening is that every first page has some sort of large panel of action that either has something occurring that's dangerous and scary, or Superman doing something fantastic. This one happens to be a man getting hit by a car, and it's a hit and run, hit skip driver. Superman sees it, goes, that's bullshit. Goes to chase down the guy who hit him, pushes the car off the road because the guy stalls on a railroad track, and is racing the railroad train to just the train. Yeah. The train. There's no real difference. So, there's a drunk conductor on the train. A lot of people who see Superman are either drunk or asked if they are drunk. Very interesting. So there's a drunk conductor on the train, and Superman races to the car, gets the guy out of the car, but the guy has a heart attack from almost being hit by the train. The guy's dead. Superman goes, wow, that's over, I guess. Leaves the dude there, jumps to the train.
He's still, sworn that he's going to do something about reckless drivers in general, right? Correct?
No, not this one. That isn't
this
one.
Well, that's the thing. I feel like that...
No.
Is there not anything explicit? Okay. No. In one way or another, 7 issues from now, there will be an entire issue about reckless driving, and I thought it was a direct continuation of this.
So, regardless, Superman sees this guy have a heart attack, jumps to the train, I guess, for reasons unknown. He doesn't need the train as a mode of transportation. He just kind of jumps on the train, jumps inside the train, and then hides. Why? Why hide? But he hears a crooked football coach hiring these 2 toughs to hurt the men on the opposite team in the game tomorrow so they can keep his job and make more money. Superman goes, that's not okay at all. Goes to the Daily Star record room, goes to the photo clippings of the team that is about to be attacked, finds a bench warmer guy who is just terrible, and says, I'm going to dress up like him. Uses grease paint makeup, and perfectly makes himself look like that other dude.
Not just that. In the next scene, when he takes the guy's place, he is wearing the exact same clothes. Mm-hmm. And... even better. This guy, Burke.
I believe you're right. It is Tommy Burke. Tommy Burke, who is on the other team.
Burke shows up at his girlfriend's place. It is very clearly at her place. Mm-hmm. And as he's walking away from there, Superman finds him and takes his place. So Superman has presumably been stalking this guy to find out what clothes he's going to wear and where his girlfriend lives.
Yeah. Isn't that how you take the place of another person being?
Usually I just use psychic manipulation.
That works too. Person being, by the way, not human being. Person being. So, yes, Clark eventually notices this lover's quarrel happening. The woman no longer wants to be seen with Tommy Burke because he's a loser. She says, piss off. Tommy stomps off. He's all pissed off.
And she's going to go out with the tennis player.
Yeah, I guess. A real athlete, she says. Tennis people do work out very hard, and they are athletes.
Yeah, but that's not the jock stereotype.
But I fail to see how you would make a comparison to a football player not being a real athlete.
Well, to be fair, he's been a 6 or 7 year bench warmer.
But still, he's still training and working out. They don't let you not do that stuff. You're expected to be in shape because at any moment you're supposed to go in and play. Mm-hmm. It would make sense if he was like a golfer. And she was like a real athlete. Because there is that argument that golfing is not like a real sport, to which I could get into an argument with people about that.
Even aside from that, you don't have an athlete's body. And I say this as a fencer. I was a fencer, I wasn't an athlete.
Right. you could have said a winner,
Yeah.
and it would have hurt way more. You know?
Your imprecision reduces the emotional impact of your manipulation.
I feel like we should have been behind the door feeding her lines.
Reverse Cyrano de Bergerac?
Yes. Call him a loser. You went with real... You're the worst, Tiffany. Just as we close the door. We're mean people. But still, Superman encounters this guy as he's leaving and goes, hey, don't I look just like you? Yeah, that's really weird. Guess what? This smells like chloroform.
No, it's a hypodermic needle.
That's even better. He injects him with something, and then Tommy Burke loses consciousness. He's then waking up in a bed somewhere, I guess in his own apartment, and Superman goes, hey, just don't worry about it. Relax. Goes to practice. Gets in an argument with somebody in the locker room because the guy keeps calling him a loser, and Superman ain't no loser. Shoves the guy into the lockers, gets in trouble, and they're like, Burke, you're benched permanently. And he gets all mad and says, I'm not going to take any of that. Goes out, suits up anyway, goes out there during the practice, shows everybody up because he's Superman and he can just wreck the entire team. And they're like, forget it, Burke. You're starting tomorrow. Everyone's excited for Burke to do well, but of course the bad guys are like, crap, we got to now hurt this guy because this guy is clearly the biggest threat on the team. Burke and Superman are in his apartment, and Superman's like, hey, dude, everyone loves you. Isn't that cool? And Tommy Burke's like, I guess I can't really fight back. You're kind of crazy strong. So the next game, the bad guys go to Tommy Burke's apartment and tie Tommy Burke up because that's who is in the bed. But Superman lets them do that. Goes to the game and starts playing, and they're like, didn't we just... Huh? Like a very Looney Tunes moment. Where they're like, I thought we tied him up. And of course they're, trying their best to, stop him. And they get, knives and crap onto the field. Mm-hmm. And they're, trying to legit stab Burke. If this was actually Burke, he'd be dead. Legitimately killed on the field of sporting. As they're winning, Burke gets free in his apartment, goes to the game, and watches himself play football, essentially, which is a very meta thing, and watches his girlfriend dump the tennis player during the game because he's doing so well. Fickle woman.
And he gets super psyched, and he's cheering.
Cheering for himself.
Cheering for himself right behind his girlfriend. How bad of a girlfriend is she that she doesn't recognize his voice when he is 6 feet behind her yelling,
or turn
at
around,
himself.
Turn around to see the guy who's cheering on her boyfriend. To kind of that's really cool. That guy's cheering my boyfriend on. That's my boyfriend. What is happening?
This is a dysfunctional relationship.
This is just a weird thing that's going on, and I love it to bits.
Yeah.
So Superman wrecks those two guys who were the thugs who were trying to hurt him, and then goes to the locker room and switches clothes with Burke because he's like, "Hey man, you get to win." So lets Burke do the final play. Burke grabs the ball after kind of a shitty handoff, and he's on the field to collect the accolades because it's really Burke. So Superman doesn't actually take the credit for all the work. He lets Burke be the good guy and get the girl in the end. And Superman's like, I feel good about this, and that's the end of the story. Is just
to be fair, the antagonist coach retires.
Yeah, the antagonist coach sends his resignation in by courier.
Yep.
By water boy, and it's really weird. And that's the end of the story. And of course they're like, hey kids, you want to learn how to acquire super strength? Do manual labor. Move furniture.
Specifically lift, and I can't tell if they're using their knees.
I can't either, but it's instructions on how to get super strength, and it's a child lifting an armchair, what appears to be a filing box, a dining room chair, and then another armchair. And it's hey, the more you do it, the stronger you get. Just tell them to work out.
It's holes.
Yeah. So Action Comics number 5. Superman basically fixing a dam that breaks, which is a very Superman thing to do. This is something you would see at the start of a Superman story to get you into and the dam breaking was as a result of a bad guy,
Yeah.
This is This is kind of the thing that you would normally see in a Superman story where the dam, people are hearing that this dam is breaking and areas are flooding, and of course the editor wants Clark to get down there, but Clark is nowhere to be seen. So Lois goes, can't I do it? And he's like, no, this is no job for a girl. And she's like, well, you're a piece of shit. And finds Clark outside the Daily Star building, says, hey, there's a woman giving birth to 7 babies. Go do that thing. And he goes, sure, thanks, Lois. Thanks for the tip. And runs off. And she's like, got him. And just bolts to go to the dam. So Clark gets to the hospital, and of course there's nothing there. And he goes, Lois got the better of me. And he gets to be in the Superman garb. Because when he goes back to the editor to go what's going on? The editor's like, you're fired. Like, you just, I'm done with this. You're fired. So Clark decides, I'm going to go to the dam and repair it as well as write about my exploits. Races a train to get to the dam. Lois has already gotten on the train and is already on her way there. Clark saves the train from going over kind of a bridge that's been damaged by the flood. And then the bridge breaks after the train goes across it. Lois is going towards the tragedy, taking a taxi, going all this way. Clark is trying very hard to keep this dam in check the whole time, but it breaks. And he has to go save Lois, who's in her car and is trapped in the taxi. He rescues her, runs with her away to a safe, dry place. And this is the first time they kiss. Lois kisses Superman, and he takes her back and calls the Daily Star and says, hey, by the way, am I fired because I have a story about Superman? The guy says, nope, you're rehired. He goes back to the Daily Star, and the next day, Lois is like, oh my God, Clark. And she's just so, like, the venomous words she uses, for example, the spineless worm, I can hardly bear looking at him after having been in the arms of a real man.
A real He-Man.
A real He-Man, master of Eternia.
Well, there's no hyphen. Oh God, He-Man is married into the Man Clan.
From Jeff He and Leslie Mann. Also, if you'd like to win one of the $25 and $1 prizes we are giving away, turn to the back inside cover of this comic.
I'm actually trying to figure out, are there 25 different $1 prizes?
I think it's specifically $25 in one $1. So it's like they send in $1 and you get a $25 prize. I don't know. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
The phrasing is strange.
Regardless, if you want to win that, listeners, turn to the back cover of this issue and send it in. I'm sure DC Comics will not at all honor that obligation from so many years ago.
No prize. So two things. The first is, it's worth noting that even though Lois kisses Superman, and it's worth noting, she kisses him.
Yes.
That is explicitly her taking agency, but we don't see it.
We don't see the kiss. It's like one panel of them like about to, and then the next panel is like Superman's like, wow, what a kiss. But she kisses him. You're right. Yeah. She kisses him.
It's this weird situation where there's a lot of stuff being implied. Same as with Catwoman. There's a whole lot of sensuality being implied. No cleavage.
No.
It's very interesting to see that in this pre-Comics Code era.
Right.
Okay.
And that was a short issue too.
Yeah.
Like that's
simple.
Like we literally covered that within like I want to say 3 minutes because it's like I said, that's the start of an issue or an episode of a Superman anything. Is this natural disaster is not the thing that like really is the crux of it. It's just really strange to me that they like had a whole issue of just him stopping a dam from breaking.
Yeah, the only other piece there that really happens is he stops a bridge from collapsing.
Right.
Like, the dam feels to me like the same kind of, and then we realized that it had been a while since Superman did anything important, so we had him save a dam.
Right.
Cool.
He hasn't stopped any wars lately, so.
Exactly that. And on other notes, let's look at Action Comics number 6. Action Comics, unlike Detective Comics, knows what a gorilla is.
Yeah, it does. But they have also had the most questionable covers.
Ooh, yeah, there's some stuff in there. It's very clear that this is an action... The other stuff is probably action pulp stories.
Right. So there's some... We'll put some pictures up, but there is some questionable stuff that doesn't really relate to Superman or any of the other heroes at the time. That it's just interesting to note. Yeah. So Action Comics number 6, the last one we're going to cover in this episode, is another really kind of a strange one that, again, is sort of a weird departure from what you normally think a Superman story is.
It's a break in tone.
Right. So there's a lot of Superman articles going around now because Superman's been doing a lot of stuff, but the editor of the Daily Star brings in Clark to his office and says, hey, this is Superman's publicist. Or agent,
also,
rather.
Is that the first time we've seen Man of Steel?
Possibly. In one of the Daily Star headlines, yes, it does say Mystery Man of Steel reappears. So perhaps Superman is getting his nicknames from Clark. Clark is picking out the best names for himself and saying, like, these would be super dope.
Yes.
I like Man of Steel.
Well, to be fair, headlines usually get picked by other...
By editorial staff. Yeah, that's fair. But still. Yeah. Clark could be pitching them.
That's entirely possible.
Clark is being introduced to the personal manager of Superman, and he's already pissed off about this. And the guy is saying, like, oh, yeah, I totally know Superman. And Clark's like, oh, I bet you do. Hey, check it out. There's Superman gasoline being advertised at the back of a blimp, and Clark is just pissed off that this guy is capitalizing off Superman's name. There's going to be a Superman car, all sorts of junk. And Clark's like, yeah, I want to meet Superman. And the guy goes, sure, you think I'm a liar? Yeah, I'll let you meet Superman. And you can tell he's like, oh, shit. Outside the editor's door, an inquisitive office boy has been getting an earful. Not Jimmy Olsen, blonde-haired, goofy-looking Tintin dude. tells Lois that, hey, Clark's in there with Superman's personal manager, and she is all over that. She goes up to Clark, asks him out on a date. Clark's like, well, I'm kind of busy tonight. I gotta go meet Superman and Superman's manager. And she's like, oh, that's more important than I am. And he goes, oh, yeah, I'll take you out. I'll take you out. So they go out to dinner. Both of them thinking that they've tricked the other. Going like, it's so easy to wrap you around my finger. It's like, it's so easy to make you think that I'm putty in your hands. They meet up. They go out to a really nice club. There's a woman singing a Superman song.
And there's one particular piece of it that gets me. Mm-hmm. So it's all referential, like...
You're a Superman, that's what the song is called.
Mm-hmm. But there's one particular line. When you crush me in your arms, I must reveal I'm only flesh and blood and not resistless steel.
Is he killing her?
Not intentionally, I'm sure, but this is one of those Man of Steel, Woman of Kleenex moments.
Puns. And gross metaphors.
Yeah.
So Clark and Lois are having a relatively okay time, but you can tell she's being polite. And while they're distracted and while they're at this dinner, we get a shot of the manager and some red-haired gentleman pretending to be Superman. And he's like, all you gotta do is just convince this guy and lift up this fake furniture, and he'll think you're Superman. Don't worry about it. We got this covered. Back at the restaurant, Superman and Lois are talking. Lois slips Clark a roofie, and Clark plays along with it and passes out. So I'm under the impression that he can taste it, or at least can feel that something is different.
Yeah.
Brings one to believe that Clark has had experience with roofies in his system so that he knows what it feels like and knows that he should probably pass out.
Either that or just general awareness of, oh, this is probably what this is, judging by the delivery mechanism.
Which is impressive.
Yeah. We talk about this a little bit with Arden. So
if you are concerned about the fact that Lois Lane just roofied Clark Kent to get out of dinner with him, we talk about that.
Specifically to get out of it early.
To get out of it early and to go steal his story. So Lois takes a cab, goes to the place, and Clark is like, double crossing a pal, eh? Just like a newspaper woman. He is kind of a little bit respectful of that and admires her for it. Regardless.
Yeah, it is the ruthlessness as being perceived as a positive trait.
Yes. So regardless, he jumps to the location where they're supposed to meet. Lois is already there meeting the two men. One of the guys is, trying to pull the I'm Superman act, lifting furniture and whatnot. And Lois sees right through it because she's like, you guys are full of crap. This is a fake desk. This is rubber, etc., etc. And they're like, oh, she's smart. So they think, well, we'll just kill her. Because that's the escalation you run to, is like, we're going to kill you instead. So they go and they're like, we're going to throw you out of the window. Superman has his first I caught Lois moment.
Yeah,
Lois falling and he catches her, and it's like, thank God he doesn't Gwen Stacy her. But he catches her, everything's fine. He goes back into the room and beats the tar out of these gentlemen who are trying to hide from him. He pulls them back out of the elevator, pulls the elevator back up the shaft, and rips them out of the elevator, and is cracking these guys all over the place, and jumps out with them, jumps them to the police station, tells them, hey man, if you don't come clean, I'm gonna come back for you. And the Superman dude totally turns on the bad guy, says it was his fault, it's his idea, blah blah blah, and they get arrested for lying.
And the line I like is, if I'm not locked in a jail for protection, there's no telling what it'll do to me. Like, a jail cell is going to stop Superman.
Of course it's going to stop Superman. Not. At the end, of course, we have another, hey kids, acquiring super strength, muscle training, do weird stuff with your wrists. I don't know what this is. It's telling you to clench your fists and jerk your wrists around and weird things. That doesn't do that. So that is the end of the issues we're covering for this episode. But
I do actually have one thing I want to cover in that particular one. It's the first issue that really gets into, or that even kind of touches barely on the merchandising. So I did some digging around, and it is actually really impressive how quickly Superman just became a transmedia franchise. Everything Superman. But mostly I just focused on the other ways that Superman stories were being told. So January of 1939, so we've already reached this point, was when the comic strip first appeared. Mm-hmm. So you get a bunch of new elements introduced that way. And then the radio show started in February of 1940. I think that's where Jimmy Olsen comes from. I'm not sure about that, though.
We'll have to check in on that, but that could be.
And then a bunch of stuff from that transferred over to the cartoon, which started in September of 1941. And even as early as 1940, Superman was in the Macy's Day Parade. As one of the balloons. Apparently one of the biggest ones ever, or possibly the biggest. And it's insane how quickly all of that just... I mean...
For those of you not familiar with the Macy's Day Parade, it is a Thanksgiving thing. In New York, they have a big parade and float thing for a bunch of people, and it's just like big balloons and performances for kids and families, and it's a nice thing to do.
There's a Snoopy balloon. There's a Garfield balloon.
Right,
there's
probably floats
some
for TV shows that have like performers who kind of do live performances. It's a really nice... It's a tradition in America. If you're not in America while you're listening to this, hi. But that's what the Macy's Day Parade is. It's a big deal, and there's a Superman balloon in it. That's a big deal.
Yeah. That's a sign that this character has very quickly become huge.
You've made it.
Yes.
If you're a Macy's balloon thing. Like, if we were a Macy's balloon, which I don't know what that balloon would be, it would one be horrifying.
Yep.
And really, really meta, but it also would be like we were household names.
Yeah. But then I kept digging, and I discovered two pieces that really entertained me. Mm-hmm. The first is the first episode of the Superman cartoon. All of them are apparently free online. So
cool.
From that like early run.
Those would be fun to watch.
Fleischer, I don't remember the name of the company that did them.
I'd really be interested in watching those.
They're very Looney Tunes-ish. But Superman punches a laser. Like, not a laser gun, but just like a laser ray.
The beam?
The beam is pushing him, and he's flying back at it, forcing his way through, and he punches the ray out of the way. But the other best thing is, after one particular, I don't remember the name of it, but one of the Superman TV shows, live action, came to an end. They were looking around for pilots for other Superman-esque shows, or rather Superman-branded shows. And I think they looked at a Superboy one, but they also looked at The Adventures of Super Pup, which is
like Crypto?
Which is a Fursona Superman world. Everyone in the Superman world replaced with anthropomorphic dogs.
Huh.
And the best part is, it was only an unaired pilot. The villain of the episode was named Professor Sheepdip.
I'd watch it.
I'm sure it's online somewhere.
I'd watch that.
I don't understand it.
I'd watch it just for the sake of saying I watched it, like the Star Wars holiday special.
Are you sure you want to go down that road?
Just to say that I've seen it.
All right.
Just like I don't have to enjoy it, and I don't have to be sober, but I'd like to at least be able to be like, yeah, I've seen it. I can accurately talk about it.
All right, fair enough.
So my little wrap up here is probably going to be a lot shorter than our cohesive one, but I did the power calculations because I was curious at this era when Superman is just being introduced, what his powers were. So of course the one I can't really calculate because I'm not a physics expert is how strong he is. So a switchblade breaks on his skin, and bursting shells from like artillery are supposed to be the only things that could really hurt him. So I'm going to say he's very, 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 very strong. Stronger than steel. Stronger than most buildings. Things that can do a lot of damage to people. He's very strong. He's very durable. He can jump 1/8 of a mile, which is about 660 feet.
That's pretty good distance.
So he can long jump 1/8 of a mile horizontally, but he can also leap 200 feet in the air, because they say he can leap about 20 stories. So we're going to say roughly 10 feet per story. He races a lot of trains, and we kind of like went back and forth. Like, we did a lot of math today, and by we I mean Matt did better math than I did. And there was a couple instances of like him racing trains, and him like later in the next episode we'll get into him catching a bullet and stopping Lois from being shot. And we kind of did the speed calculation for him. He runs or can travel about 10,636 miles per hour, which is several Machs. So, for reference, the speed of sound is 767 miles per hour. He is running faster than the speed of sound at this point. It would take him, what did we say, like maybe 15 minutes to cross the entirety of the United States from shore to shore. He's very fast at this point. Not as fast as he is perceived to be in later comics. Mm-hmm. Much further down the line, when he's like at the sun and comes back in like 10 seconds, he's still incredibly fast. He's also able to lift about 50 times his own body weight. They use the ant analogy, saying like, this is how strong ants are. Like an ant, he can lift tremendous weights. So the average weight of a human is probably about 137 pounds. Multiply that by 50. It's about 6,850 pounds he can lift, roundabout.
3 elephants?
At least 3 tons, if I'm not mistaken. A ton is 2,000.
Sounds right.
Cars at that time were about 1 ton. 2,265 pounds for maybe like a Model T truck Ford Model T at the time. So he's really, really strong. Not as strong as lifting a mountain, lifting a building, but he's strong. He can do a lot. He can run very fast and he can jump very far. He can withstand a lot of pain. But those are the only powers he has right now.
And it's worth noting that as early as the first cartoon that I watched, so as early as September of 1941, he is already flying. And he's already holding up a building as it sags.
Okay then. So that's a very quick transition for him. So those are the power calculations. We're going to get into the thing now that I like the best about this, is that you had a very good point that you made about him in general. And I think we should end on that one because it's it's a much better point than mine. But he's a Superman. He's not Superman. He's not the most powerful being on the face of the planet. He's just like a really, really good dude. There's nothing about him that makes him stand out more than any human being on Earth, other than he's just able to do these things. He is a super, quote-unquote, man. And I like that. I think it's very funny because all the things that he's doing are like man wish fulfillment. Stopping a dam, ending war, playing football. Like, bullshit. Just absolute weird stuff. Like, that. Like this is beneath you on so many levels. You have all this power and you're playing football because you feel like it. Like, he's doing on a whim stuff. He's not protecting the greater good. He's doing things that, like, are teaching people lessons and being the best things. And your point is, he's the king of the world.
That is one piece of it. So, first off, something that I don't think we do often enough, but I do want to call out, thank you, Siegel and Schuster, for making this character.
Yes.
And thank you, everybody who has developed him. We riff because we like it.
Yeah.
And we riff because we don't like pieces of it at given times, but we wouldn't be riffing if we didn't like the core character. So thank you for creating that character.
Boo liking things, boo.
Cynicism.
Boo respect and adoration.
But, okay, so I have issues with Superman at this point. He actually genuinely creeps me out in some ways.
Yeah, I can see that.
So we've previously established Batman is a series of verbs in the first couple issues of Detective Comics that he's in. Mm-hmm. Or at least that was the description that I came up with that I latched onto. So he's the guy who's ready for just about anything. He knows everything. He has all the gadgets. And he's just action in all of those different ways. Superman is a few verbs, only a couple, but he's the biggest verbs. Or his verbs are the biggest. In the sense that Superman handles most of his problems in just one way. I think the mine and the football game are actually two separate examples.
They're anomalies.
They're anomalies, yes. Whereas all of the other problems, you've joked about Superman solves his problems by jumping. But let's extrapolate that out. So the idea of, like, the times where he grabs somebody and just jumps around until they say, God, fuck, okay, I'll do what you want. Let's extrapolate that out. Superman at this point is mostly one verb. Threat. Specifically, Superman is Batman at this point. Modern Batman, that idea of, at his most dystopian, the fear that everybody puts in front of Batman, this is what you could be. That not just that source of fear, but that overwhelming watching sense, and the
I will be everywhere. I will be. You'll never get away from me. I will always be there to make you straighten out.
And
you'll never
you will
get rid of me.
fear, and by fearing, because the bad guys fear me,
right,
they will do right. That is exactly what Superman is doing here.
Right.
This is intimidation and dystopia. Additionally, well, not necessarily additionally, but another part of that weave, another thread of that weave is Superman here is embodying the idea of change through strength. Like you mentioned, the king of the world, that is exactly what this is. And it's no more nuanced than that. Superman is the character who Siegel and Schuster presumably sat down and said, if I were king of the world and could do anything, how would I make things better? And the way he makes things better is the most simplistic, bullheaded, just by force and fear methods.
I'm the best. I will do it the best way, straightest line possible. Like, point A to point B, no roundabout, no good thinking, no plan. I'm just going to make this happen. Very Hal Jordan.
Yeah. How do we get rid of war? Hold a gun to the head of the warmongers.
Right.
His idea of social change, the times where he is inspiring are that people are paralyzed, but once I do a violent thing, they'll listen and be inspired. Right. It's change through strength. And that scares me because, especially at this point in time, the perception was that democracy was paralyzed, that it was overridden, especially by somewhat capitalist, but also just you don't have the will. Democracy didn't have the will to make things better. And that's one of the things that communism and, to some degree, anarchism, but mostly communism and fascism embodied was, we will take action. And by taking action in a particular direction, not necessarily a nuanced direction, but just because we take action, things will turn out better. This is not necessarily an anti-democratic or anti-capitalist form of this, but it is still that idea that all that is necessary is to act. Because all that is missing is for one man to stand up and hit something with a hammer. And that scares the hell out of me because in this, he is not a defender. He is a punisher. Every enemy isn't just beaten, they're humiliated.
They're reduced to a blubbering mass of crying, whimpering, oh my god, please stop, leave me alone. I'll surrender myself if it means I have to get away from you.
Exactly that. They're faint, they're terrorized by how the bullets bounce off of him, they're subjected to being jumped around with. So one quote that I felt really summarized why I am uncomfortable with this version of Superman is, obstacles do not exist to be surrendered to, but only to be broken. That feels like what Superman is doing at this point, and that's a Hitler quote.
Superman currently is an unchecked force.
Yes. And the idea is that force is almost in and of itself good.
Right.
Because every time he uses it.
Which is funny because that's what everyone tries to sell him as whenever they write stories of governments afraid of Superman. That he's an unchecked force. But currently when Superman is written, he is always a man who is always in control.
Yep.
And everyone is just scared. They never see him like this, as a man who actually cannot be stopped and is acting on whatever whim he chooses purely because he's strong enough.
Yeah. That idea that all you have to do is act is the core of the bad that superheroes can do. But now that whole idea is completely lost because characters in the fiction throw it at Superman. But Superman is written as the always good.
They think he's Golden Age Superman, but really he's now Superman.
Well, I don't even think this is Golden Age Superman, because one thing that I've read a little bit about, and I haven't done the research on, apparently in 1941, the editor of what would eventually become DC Comics put in, like, hey, here's a code of action. None of our heroes do anything outside of that. And my suspicion is that's when we start to see the Golden God and the Batman who doesn't just willy-nilly murder Sikhs.
Probably, I would imagine. But we'll obviously get to that point. Yeah. We'll be able to do that comparison.
One happy note that I want to close out on. All the enemies that Superman has faced have been venal. They have been cowards. They've just been out for self-interest. That's why he goes after monsters all the time. That's why he winds up going up against warmongers and munitions salesmen. So that means he never faces anyone who believes as strongly as he does. And
they don't have conviction.
Exactly that. There's one character in all of these stories who does, though. From the beginning, Lois is the only person who has had force of character, of will, that doesn't crack down. She has never been shown to be weak or...
Lois is the only one who is an equal to him in her character.
Yep.
There was no other character that has the same qualities of a person who is single-mindedly driven and who thinks that they are right.
Yes.
That's fair. So that's fair and absolutely accurate.
Yeah, and it's very interesting to see, okay, there's that core of that relationship. Two people who believe in themselves that much. Mm-hmm. So that's the happy little ending note.
Yeah, that is good. And it's interesting to see that, and I'm sure we'll be very excited to see that evolve as we go on, because next episode we're going to go to I want to say Action 12, maybe 13.
Presumably.
There's also going to be the World's Fair issue of Superman, which is really interesting. And then we'll see some more of Superman being Superman in some very interesting ways. And we will see that next time on DC Detectives.
DC Detectives can be found on iTunes and Stitcher.
To stay in the know, check out our Facebook, Twitter, and Tumblr pages.
Visual aids, episode notes, and more can be found on DCDetectivespodcast.com. Superman was here, all right, but not the man we thought we'd find. Instead of clarifying this looking-glass reflection, he only furthered to muddy the waters. War, football, pseudo-Superman, Lois Lane's questionable dating etiquette. We'd left one case and we'd fallen into another, one that we had to solve for our own sanity. With our vacation turning steadily into a business trip that threatened to spin our heads clear around, we wondered what fresh oddities awaited us here.